Pokémon Heroes, released in 2003, was the fifth Pokémon movie and introduced us to the iconic legendary Pokémon Latias and Latios. It is also the lowest grossing Pokémon movie of all time and barred Pokémon movies from being in American theaters for over a decade. And critics at the time were not fans either, one even saying that this film wasn't enjoyable for adults or children. However, there are a lot of people who are nostalgic and enjoy this film, me included. In Japan, there was a poll held by the Pokemon Company for the 25th anniversary of Pokemon, and Japan ranked it as one of the top 3 Pokemon films of all time. But does this movie actually deserve the praise it gets from the Pokemon fandom? Or were the critics accurate and were the moviegoers correct by skipping this one in theaters? Well, I'm Flyboy, and in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think about these movies. Do they deserve the praise they get retrospectively? Did they deserve more praise back then? I believe the failure of this film was due to circumstance, not substance. And of course, along the way, I'm going to tell you exactly why I think this may be the greatest Pokemon movie of all time. Which, to be fair, isn't like a super high bar, I guess, but hey, they were making some bangers in the 90s and 2000s, okay? Anyways, let's get on with it. And for reference, I'll be using a fan sub version of the Japanese movie, and we'll get into that later when we talk about the localization. Oh, and of course, spoiler alert, I know it's a 20-year-old movie, but you never know. Before my actual thoughts, I'm just going to give you a quick plot summary of what happened in this movie. Don't worry, it will be quick. Basically, Ash and friends come to this island called Alto Mare, sort of like a tourist destination, looks like Venice, Italy. And there is a Soldu, which is like a gem that protects the city that's in the middle of this ocean. And Latias and Latios are the protectors of this city. The two antagonists, Annie and Oakley, want to take the Soldu and use it for their own evil agenda. Ash and friends, Latias, and the sacrifice of Latios led to Alto Mare being saved. First impressions. Now, I just said I was going to use the fan sub as my reference, but let me talk about the 4Kids one for a sec, because they cooked in the intro. I genuinely think this is like the greatest intro to any like Pokemon movie. I was going to say any movie, but that's probably a little exaggerating. But for any Pokemon movie, this might be the best intro of all of them, okay? You know, the setup, you've got Ash and Misty lining up to race in this Venice-looking city, and you got this amazing song just pumping you up. I mean, come on.
No time to question my moves. I stick to the path that I choose. Me and my friends are gonna do it right. You'll never see.
I remember as a kid, it always pumped me up, and when I rewatched it, the dub version, I literally got chills. It was just such a good intro, and I really think it was a good introduction to the film, not only just to get kids excited to watch it, but also to set up the mystery and the setting of Alto Mare. I think this is a brilliant setup to the film. I think the song is just the perfect addition to this film, so good job to 4Kids for making like a good change for once. And the Japanese one, it's not bad per se, I just think this one is brilliant. That's probably nostalgia talking, but fortunately, this isn't the only good song in the soundtrack. The rest of the music is brilliant as well. The soundtrack. Usually dubs, especially in the 2000s for like anime kids movies, changed the songs and the soundtrack in the film, usually for the worse. But here we have an awesome exception. While 4Kids changed the intro song, and I think that was a good change, they maintained the rest of the Japanese soundtrack, and boy, are there some freaking bangers in this. I think Search for the Girl is a brilliant song. It really gets you in the mood into this sort of Italian setting, which we'll talk about in a second. And there's some other bangers in the soundtrack. I'll talk about one in particular when we talk about the themes, but the soundtrack is just wonderful. I really wasn't expecting a ton. I don't think most people are for an old Pokemon movie, but it's great. I think it adds into the ethereal and mysterious atmosphere that they were going for in this film, in its setting in Latias and Latios, of course. So I think it's great that they had a good soundtrack to back it up. The setting. Now, moving away from the music, I want to talk about the setting, which I've hinted at a bit in both of the previous sections, but it's Alto Mare. It's based on the city Venice, Italy, and I think the writers and director visited Italy and thought it would be a good setting to enhance the mysterious feeling you would get in this film, which I think is a great touch. You've got these winding roads, it's like a maze. You've got these waterways throughout the city with these gondolas in them. It's literally like a Pokemon version of Venice. It's kind of on the nose, like it's trying to be like Venice, Italy, but I think the changes to make it Pokemon were great. Like, it really made it feel like this was a Pokemon city. It wasn't like they just took Venice, Italy and pasted a Pidgey in there. I really think the Pokemon looked like they belonged there. It's like this city was, built with Pokemon in mind. And speaking of mazes, there was this scene in the film where Ash gets lost and the camera sort of pans around him as he looks around with this awesome song playing. And I know it's kind of a sidetrack, but I just loved the cinematography here. And it really gave me chills again. I got goosebumps watching it. I thought it was great. It not only tied into, the plot itself, Ash was lost, but it really emphasized how maze-like this city was. The sanctuary in the garden itself that Ash goes into is very ethereal and mysterious. It's a really cool place. And I said mystery a lot up to this point, but really what this film does great is make it feel like there's more than meets the eye, which I think is a great reflection of the Pokemon games. I mainly talk about the Pokemon games on this YouTube channel, but I really think these movies really encapsulate what those games did best. There was always something to explore in these games. There's always more that you could find. There was a mystery that was literally tailored for like kids' sense of wonder. And this film does that too, through the setting, through the music. It's a movie, so you can't make it, an open world to explore, but at the same time, it reinvokes those same sort of feelings you have when you do play the older Pokemon games. Here, let's just say that they did a great job emulating that sense of mystery and exploration that you had in the 2D games, except in a movie. The characters. Now, let's talk about the characters. Of course, you're going to have your evergreen Pokemon characters, those being Ash, Pikachu, Misty, Brock, and Team Rocket. And, some people have criticized this film for having those characters take a backseat, but I kind of like that they did that. We have a whole TV show that can help develop these characters. What I like about this film is the emphasis it had on the new characters, the residents of Alto Mare, and the new villains that we got as well. First, let's talk about Bianca and Lorenzo. They don't have a ton. Bianca sort of just plays as, Latias's caretaker, who Latias, takes on the form of when she's disguising herself as a human. And Lorenzo kind of just plays as like the exposition dump guy. But, they're not too in your face. They're not too in the way. They just kind of are there and they're tastefully thrown in through the film. They're not overbearing. I don't get sick of them. I think with Lorenzo, there's a great balance that the writers did that allowed him to, exposition dump a bit, but they never let him go on for too long. Something interrupts him or something gets in the way, and it allows the film to keep kids engaged while also keeping them informed. I thought it was great. Maybe I'm just glazing, but, that's what I think about Lorenzo. And Bianca being an artist is dope. We love that. But next we have the villains, and I love them. You have Annie and Oakley. I think what these villains do perfectly is that they are vain, but they aren't stupid, okay? They're not like Team Rocket. They're not just sort of, bumbling fools. They are very professional, very skilled at doing like spy stuff. That they're these like two secret spy thief. If you've played Ace Attorney, it's kind of like Kay Faraday, but they're like the great thieves, and I think they did a great job characterizing them, especially from each other, because on the one hand you have Annie, who is very super vain, and she's a little ignorant, she's a little foolish, and then you have Oakley, who's more sinister, and she almost takes advantage of Annie by playing into her vanity at times, like the Soul Dew. While Oakley wanted to pursue the Soul Dew for power, Annie just thought it looked beautiful, so Oakley would leave out the part where if you use it for evil intentions, it will destroy everything, and just said, look at how pretty it is. So I really think they played into each other very well, and the Pokemon selection they had, Ariados and Espeon, really reflected their personalities. I thought it was cool. We'll talk about Oakley a little bit more in the theme section, but let's talk about the stars of the show. We have Latias and Latios. First, I want to say Latias is like so adorable. She is so cute. You know, she has this fun, cute dynamic with Ash, but also she is a little sister to Latios. And so there's a cool dynamic between her and Latios as well. I think here where we don't really see character development for Ash or any of the human characters, we do see character development for Latias. Latias was dependent on Latios, her older brother, to play the role of protector, which they're supposed to be over this island of Altomare. And Latias, through her love of Ash, is able to develop that ability to become a protector, to overcome her own fear. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but I just want to say that Latias and Latios really did a good job at making you care about Pokemon as more than just animals. In my last episode, we talked about Team Plasma and how N truly believed Pokemon were equals to humans, and this film does a good job at sort of displaying that point, that there is a lot more to Pokemon than just being your cute, cuddly creatures that you battle with. But again, it is through Latias and Latios we also see the greatest themes in this film. The themes. I think first and foremost, it's a Pokemon film, and like Pope John Paul II said, it teaches us about friendship. So friendship is a great theme in this film, and there is a great moment in the film where this is really emphasized. Latios has been captured by Annie and Oakley, and Latias is on the run. There's a revived Kabutops and Aerodactyl chasing after Latias and Ash, and all seems lost, it all seems hopeless. It isn't until Ash, Misty, Brock, their Pokemon, and Latias all come together and start thinking as one and working together that the tides turn. And there's an amazing song that plays that sort of gets you pumped up once Ash and Latias start working together and Misty and Brock start playing a role as well. That really just shows, you know, hey, you're stronger together. You know, alone, you can only do so much. But when you have a good core group of solid friends, that's when things can happen. I also think a wonderful theme that this movie teaches is the theme of duty and sacrifice and how necessary they are. I think first and foremost, we have Latios, who encapsulates a messianic figure. It's truly a tragedy what happens to him. His power is used for evil. His power that he wanted to use to protect Altomare is being used by Oakley through this cool looking machine, which of course would have to make Latios feel horrible. However, when it comes down to it, he sacrifices himself to save Altomare. And this is great. The film actually lets Latios die, okay? He becomes a Soldew that they can then use to protect the town. But what this film doesn't shy away from is having some, like, you know, oh, he didn't actually die, he's actually alive still thing happen. They actually let Latios sacrifice himself. They actually let Latios die and be that messianic figure. And I love that about this film. John 15:13 states that greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. This is a great message, and when you take away the sting, when you take away the weight of death, like if you just do a quick like, oh, he's not actually dead thing, it removes that love, you know, the weight of that sacrifice, the importance of that sacrifice doesn't hit as hard, and I'm glad this film didn't shy away from that. Now, without Latios wouldn't be able to fulfill this role because Latias had to overcome her fears. She was used to being the little sister. She was used to not really having to struggle, but it's through this film and through her love of Ash that she was able to overcome that. There was one point in the film where Latias had to share the pain of Latios, and I think it was wonderful. She helped him escape his prison. She was willing to sacrifice herself, and I think that showed the sort of coming of age, a maturity that Latios had to develop. Now, speaking of that machine that captured Latios, it was Oakley who was using the Soldew to power that machine for her own benefit. I think a good theme here that is taught is that good things can be used for evil purposes. The Soldew was used for bad purposes. However, evil can only corrupt. We see what happens when Oakley starts to use it for bad. The Soldew becomes corrupted, and it leads to It almost leads to the destruction of the entire island. Also, once she's in the machine, she loses control. She's not able to control the machine as much. And this shows what happens when we give ourselves up to sin. Satan takes control of us. We lose our freedom, our ability to choose when we allow ourselves to be encapsulated by the chains of sin. Overall, these themes just add a level of depth to this film that I think makes it great, not just for kids, but also adults. You could really learn, nothing terribly complex, but simple truths to help you. Why did it fail? So why did these films fail? If I'm glazing them this much, why didn't they succeed at the box office or among critics? Well, I think first and foremost, Pokemon was dying. It wasn't growing at the rate it was in the 90s. It was actually taking a step back. I don't have to show you any of those 90s clips and commercials about Pokemania on Fox News or whatever, but you know that was massive. Red and Blue are still the highest selling Pokemon games of all time. And so I think just naturally there were going to be less people watching Pokemon movies because there were less people interested in these games. Furthermore, there was already a trend from the first 4 movies that viewership was dropping, and it didn't help that this movie had a limited theatrical release in North America. I think another thing is that just the Latis didn't really have the same pull as someone like Mewtwo. Mewtwo was legendary, before the film even came out, because he's the end boss. He's the most powerful Pokemon of all time, and so if he's in a movie, you're going to watch the movie. This was our first introduction into Latios and Latias, and I think it helped them gain that sort of notoriety. They didn't have it going into the release of this film. And you knew I was going to talk about it. 4Kids was the company that localized the Japanese film for the English release. And while I don't think it contributed to the reason it failed, it did make it worse in a lot of ways. I think the biggest one is that the exposition and the backstory we have to why Latios and Latias are the guardians of Altomare is just cut entirely from the English release. So, like I said, this wouldn't get anyone to get into the film, but it is a worse product in my opinion. And interestingly enough, they tweaked Oakley's intentions, I guess. Oakley in the Japanese version wanted the power of the Soldu. She knew that's where the power came from. However, in the 4Kids release, it was she just wanted the power of the machine itself in the Soldu. So it's not a big change, but it does kind of I don't know. Maybe it's just some kind of Eastern, Western cultural division between, in the East, maybe more spiritual matters like the Soldu and spirits, while in the West, we're more mechanical and industrial. So maybe the machine. I don't know. Anyways, all I'm saying is that the localization changed things, and that probably didn't help, because I do believe the Japanese version is much superior, except for that intro. I'll give it that. But genuinely, really what it comes down to is I think this could have been the greatest film of all time. This could literally be like Taxi Driver, which it's not. Don't get me wrong, it's not Taxi Driver. It's not any of these all-time great movies. It's not The Godfather Part 2. It may be The Godfather Part 2 of the Pokemon series, but again, it literally could have been The Godfather Part 2, and I don't think anyone would have gone to see it. And that's the unfortunate tragedy. I really think these films were a victim of circumstance. Pokemon Mania was gone. It was dead. The hype was gone. And unfortunately, this was just caught in the crossfire. But just because it failed back then doesn't mean it's a bad film. I genuinely believe you should watch this film if you haven't. It's great. It's a wonderful movie, and luckily we've never been in a time where it's been more accessible to watch these older movies. So whether you want to watch this on your own or with your children, I genuinely suggest it. I think it's a great film. I think it teaches great themes, and the pacing is great. I love the pacing. It's never really a dull moment, so kids will stay engaged. It's just a great film overall. Anyways, that'll do it for me. I know this is a little bit of a different type of video. I usually talk about the Pokemon games, but I wanted to talk about something else for now. Don't worry. Pokemon games are my heart. I love those. That's why I love Pokemon. Okay, so this is just a side episode. If you do want more though, make sure to hit that like button and make sure to subscribe. That's the best way to let me know that you want more of these videos. Also, don't forget to comment below what you thought about the video, but also what you think about these movies. Did you watch this movie growing up? Are you too young to? I know I'm like approaching Unk status now, so like I'm an old head. But if you haven't watched them, have you watched them, you know, as an adult looking back? Did you enjoy them? What parts about it did you like? And don't forget to share this with all the Pokemon fans in your life. I know you know at least one. But that'll do it for me. Again, I'm Flyboy, and until next time, peace.